Welcome back to my channel. I am finally making one of the most anticipated videos that I had promised. I am going to be making a very detailed, very simple sewing tutorial for a Pinterest aesthetic silk-satin skirt. It's going to be a maxi skirt. I have this fabric right here. It's a green. It gives a vintage vibe. I think it gives vintage vibe. I'm gonna use it to make a maxi slip skirt, and I'm gonna teach you step by step how to make it without a pattern. In this video, you're gonna learn how to measure yourself, how to divide your measurements, how to cut the fabric, how to sew the fabric. It's going to be very detailed, very beginner friendly. I hope you enjoy this video and I hope you find it very useful and helpful. Let's get started. We're gonna start with the measurements. For the measurements, you're going to need a book, which I have right here, a pen, as well as a measuring tape. I use this measuring tape. You can find it at your nearest fabric shop. I use centimeters. This is what centimeters look like. It has two types. We have inches. Can you see how inches are so much bigger? And then centimeters. We measure in centimeters. After you finish measuring yourself, make sure that you write down each measurement. So let's start with the waist. So the waist is literally the smallest part of your midsection. The smallest part of your midsection is your waist. For me, what makes it so much easier is when I wear a dress like this, it has a thing that literally shows me where my waist is. So that's where I am going to measure my waist. My waist size changes every day. So for me, it's giving, right here, it's giving me 63 centimeters, but I want to be comfortable when I'm wearing something, so I'm going to add 2 more centimeters in case I'm bloated, I gain weight or something. You can even add 3, you know yourself. So for me, 2 centimeters will do, which means I'm gonna write down here on my book that my waist size is 65 centimeters. The next part for this skirt, we are going to measure from waist to hips. So waist to hips, the smallest part of your waist all the way to your hips. So for a normal human female, what I have noticed from myself and also working with different clients is that we normally have a measurement of 20, maybe between 20 to 25 or maybe 15 if it's a younger child, but most of the time the measurement from your waist to your hips is usually 20 centimeters. And as you can see, for me, from here all the way to the hips right here, it is 20 centimeters. And the next part, now we are going to measure the hips. This is literally the hips. My measurements were 94.5, but I'm going to add 2 more centimeters, kinda. I mean, yeah, I actually added a little bit more. I'm gonna add a little bit more, and I'm gonna make it 98. I'm gonna make it 98 so that it's not too tight, it's just kind of like flowy and so on. You can always add, because the goal is that when you sit down, your skirt must not rip, you know. So if you add a little bit more, you have breathing room. So the next part, we are going to add from the waist all the way to the length of your skirt. I want my skirt to be like a full-on maxi skirt, but not floor length. If you see, it's starting from here all the way to here, basically, which is 80 centimeters. But this is not a distinct number. This is just my own choice for my own skirt, because at the end of the day, we have to customize our skirts differently. So mine is going to be as long as 80 centimeters. You can decide to make yours shorter or you can make it longer. It can be a floor length. You can make it like a flowing gown. Yeah. So basically that's the measurements. We are gonna write them down, and the next part of this video I'm going to be teaching you how to divide the measurements so that you can transfer those divisions to the fabric and then cut the fabric. So this part of the tutorial, we are going to be dividing our measurements that we just took so that we can use those divided measurements to cut the fabric without using a pattern, and I'm going to explain it to you on how to do it. We are going to start with the waist. As you saw, my waist size is 65. You can use your own waist size, and then you are going to divide it by 4. For me, with a 65 centimeter, I get 16.25. You'll probably get a different number. And then moving on to the hips, my hip size is 98 centimeter. Your hip size will be different. And then I'm gonna divide that 98 centimeters with a 4, and it's gonna give me 24.5 centimeter, just as you will get a different number. So the next part, we don't really need to divide. So as you saw, the measurement from waist to hips is 20 centimeter. The measurement from waist to your desired length, for me, I chose to make it as long as 80 centimeters, and then my waistline is going to be 3 centimeters. But because it's gonna be folded, I'm gonna multiply it by 2, which will give me 6 centimeters. And I'm also going to add a 2 centimeter seam allowance. We are going to discuss more about seam allowance when we start cutting the fabric. This next part of the tutorial, we are going to finally draw on the fabric and cut the fabric. And I just wanted to ask you to keep in mind that the front part of the skirt and the back part of the skirt will not be the same size or measurements, but we are going to walk through it together. The back part of the skirt, we are going to have to add a 3 centimeter on the waist so that we can also do the waist darts. That's what my mom calls it, because my mom is a fashion designer. I never went to fashion school, so we are gonna add darts, and I will walk you through it. I'll show you how to do it and so on. This is so that the skirt can have that beautiful shape. Secondly, if you ever get confused about the measurements or anything, the comment section is always open. I am open to answering any question that you would like. I will be ready to answer all your questions. So when it comes to cutting fabric, we are always going to draw or work on the inside part of the fabric, which is the less shinier part of the fabric. As you can see, this is the outside. This is what everybody looks at when you're wearing the skirt, but when we fold, we must always work on the inside part of the fabric, and that's what we are going to do. You are going to need a chalk. I'm gonna show you which chalk I use. For this tutorial, I'll be using this pink chalk. You can get them at ShopRite. ShopRite has these chalks for students and teachers and so on. I use those types of chalk. That's my tailoring chalk. And then I have these pins. They are running out. They always get lost. They always run out, but it's part of the thing. So yeah, I have these pins right here. We are going to be using these pins. So when we start sewing, if you ever make a mistake, you need this thing called a seam ripper. It looks like this. It basically helps undo the sewing. It happens. I've done it more times than not, honestly speaking. It's part of the process. Sometimes you're just gonna have to undo and do it again. So we are going to get started with the first part of the cutting process. I had accidentally started the vlog, that's why you see chalk marks, but let's just ignore that. So the first part of the cutting process is the front of the skirt. So when we cut the skirt, we always fold the fabric in half. This is the front of the skirt. It is folded in half. This is why we divide the measurements by 4, because we cut when we fold it. It makes the cutting process so much easier. So the first thing to do is to always measure the seam allowance. The seam allowance is the part that allows you to sew the seam of the skirt. So as you saw, for me, I already underlined here. It is 1 centimeter. So this small gap is 1 centimeter. This is where I am going to sew, and then there's going to be that space where we can overlap. The first part of the measuring, we are going to be measuring the length, because the length does not require any divisions, so it's so much easier to just get that out of the way. Our waist to hip length is usually 20 centimeters. We're just gonna mark that 20 centimeters down here. From waist to hips, 20 centimeters. Now we are gonna do waist to our desired length. I decided that the length of my skirt was going to be 80 centimeters from the waist to the desired length, and this means I am just gonna make a measurement all the way from here, which is the waist, to here. It's 80 centimeters. Now we are going to start measuring the circumference. So we have divided our measurements. So now we are going to get started with our waist circumference. We have established that once we have divided our waist circumference by 4, we will get a small number. For me, when I divide 65 by 4, it gives me 16.25 centimeters. So on my waist right here, I'm just gonna draw 16.50 because 25 and 50 are so close by. Really, I don't mind it. And then we are gonna move on to the hips. So once I took my hip circumference, which is 98 centimeters, divided by 4, because all the measurement circumference has to be divided by 4, it gives me 24.5 centimeters. So I'm just gonna measure here where we marked our waist, and I'm just gonna say 24.5. Guys, fashion designing is maths. So to make sure that you did measure it correctly, you can also go back and check the length to see if it's still 20 centimeters for the hips. And I noticed that mine was a little bit low, so it's always good to check if we are still at the same length. And now, as you see, I'm just gonna mark the other side of the fabric and make sure that it's also equals to 80. So this is a straight slip skirt, which means after the hips, the skirt is just gonna flow down. So for me, I'm just gonna underline and just make this straight line. So now that we have marked the length and so on, we have this small section that is left. For me, I usually just curve it like this. Just make it like a nice little shape. You can freestyle it, just make it look natural. Here we're also going to draw another straight line just to connect. And then now we're gonna cut the fabric. I also want to let you know, do not forget the seam allowance. You don't cut on the chalk. You always make sure that there is a 1 centimeter space. I'm just gonna draw it here. There is a 1 centimeter space between the chalk and where you cut. For me, I'm gonna have a zip on the side. So the size, I'm probably gonna make it 1.5 centimeters that I'll be able to fold the zip. You look here, there, 2 centimeters. Again, we have to fold the fabric. It has to be folded so that cutting can be easy. So I'm currently just folding that, and I'm just gonna show you the cutting process again. The measurements are going to stay the same except for the waist measurement, and I'm gonna explain why. So let's just get started by leaving 1 centimeter right on top for the seam allowance. My waist measurement, again, as I mentioned, 65 centimeter. When you divide it by 4, it gets to 16.25. But because this is the back part of the fabric, there is this design called darts. So darts are this triangle type of sewing design. They are usually 3 centimeters. They add a good shape to the skirt. So because of that, on top of my 16.25, I am going to add 3 extra centimeters so that we can have the space for the dart. So we usually do 2 darts design. It takes up to 3 centimeters each. So because this fabric is folded, we are only going to add 3 centimeters. For me, because my measurement is 16.25, when I add 3 centimeters, it's going to give me 19.25. So 19.25, I usually just choose 19.50 to be honest. So we have already done the waist now. It's 19.25, including the 3 centimeters for the dart. And now I'm just gonna measure that 20 centimeters from the waist to the hips, and right here I just ticked it. Now I'm just gonna go down from the waist all the way to 80 centimeters, which is the length of my skirt. I'm just gonna measure the hips. So hips are going to stay the same. Both back and front are going to be the same, which is 24,5, and I'm just gonna tick it right here on the waist. Normally, if I am ticking this, I'm just gonna go back up here from waist to hips to see if it's indeed the same measurements, because sometimes as we are measuring, we go a little bit low. As you can see, yes, I had gone a little bit low, so now I know it's right here. I'm just gonna go down again to 80. So now I'm just gonna underline the bottom part of this skirt. So now that I have ticked those parts, just noted those parts, I'm just gonna start at the waist and we're just gonna freestyle. Just gonna draw a freestyle line over there. Make sure it's beautifully curved, and then after that I'm just gonna go down straight. It doesn't matter really. The next part would be to cut the waistline. Let's start with the length. Like I spoke, my waistline length is 65. Because it's 65, I'm gonna add 2 centimeters for the seam allowance, which will give it 67. So I'm just gonna mark that 67. So because I want the width of the waistline to be 3 centimeters, it's going to be then 6 centimeters. We add 2 centimeters for seam allowance. It's going to be 8 centimeters that I'm going to be cutting, and it's the same for everyone unless you just want a thicker waistline. So we're just gonna cut another 8 centimeters this side. I'm gonna make sure that this side we are also still working with 67 on this side, because we don't want problems. We really do not want problems. So now I'm just gonna underline from bottom down there. Again, just double check to see if it's still 67, because we don't want problems. And then what I will do, so that I know, because my ruler is smaller, I'm gonna underline another 8 here. I will underline another 8 over here, another 8 over here. I was supposed to be filming, but I missed that footage. So what happened is that I just cut out what we underlined together, and what I'm gonna do is just to iron in the facing to make the waist thicker. So if you don't have a facing, it's okay. So now I'm just going to iron in this facing. So facing is this thing that you put on the waistband or any edges of parts of the fabric to make that part a little bit harder. Making it harder just gives more shape to the dress. It's not necessarily compulsory to add it. However, I just prefer it because it's something that my mom taught me. You always iron it on the inside of the fabric. Now I'm just gonna fold the waist part of the skirt and we're going to iron. This is the ironed part. It's completely finished now, and we are going to start sewing. So now that we have finished all our cuttings, I hope that you did well and that you don't have any problems. And I just want to remind you that if you experience any problems, the comment section is always open. I will be happy to assist you. We are finally going to move on to the sewing part of the tutorial. It's the easiest part. I'm so excited to finally have this skirt that I can wear. How amazing is it that we are able to cut our own fabric and make our own skirt, right? It's so cool. We don't have to buy clothes anymore. This is the back part of the fabric. So I decided that the beginning part of our sewing would be to make the dots. I'm gonna measure the middle of this fabric right here. I'm also going to measure it a little bit at the back, and I am going to draw a long line up to 10 centimeters. We're just gonna go down. So now, remember how I mentioned that we are going to add that 3 centimeters for the dots? So now we're just gonna measure 3 centimeters. This line is going to be in the middle of that 3 centimeters, which means every side of the line is going to be 1.5 centimeters. So which makes up 3 centimeters when you put it together. So you're just gonna put 2 lines to measure the 3 centimeters. If you look, 1.5 on one side, 1.5 on the other side, and then we are going to go down with the ruler. It's gonna underline and form a triangle. It's gonna connect down. So we are gonna take a ruler and we're just gonna underline, and it's gonna connect down to that end point of the 10 centimeters to create a triangle. So we are creating a triangle, and we're gonna do the same on the other side. And then we're gonna turn it around, and we are gonna do the exact same. Remember, I marked it even this side. I'm gonna mark a 10 centimeters line going downward. Remember, we are creating that triangle. So I'm gonna just draw a long line going down, 1.5 centimeters on each side. It's gonna make up to 3 centimeters. We are gonna take the ruler, turn it this side. We are gonna create a triangle. So this side that I marked is gonna go down and connect to the triangle, and then we're gonna do the same on this side. Different. So now that I have drawn this triangle, what I am going to do is to take the fabric, unfold it like this, and then I'm gonna fold it on the line. It's folded on the line, and I'm going to put pins on it. I think 2 pins will do. 2 pins will do. And where I underlined, that's where I'm going to sew. This underline, we're going to sew in that straight line. And we are gonna go to the sewing machine right now, but I just wanna make sure that I do the same on both sides. We are gonna go to the second dot right now, put in the pin on the other side, and now we are going to just sew straight, and then we're gonna sew that straight triangle line, and I'm gonna show you what it looks like once I'm done sewing it. So I have basically sewed in that triangle. As you can see, it does make the triangle on both sides, and on the outside of the fabric it looks like this. So this is how you create darts, and now we're going to combine the back fabric and the front fabric, and then we will sew. As you can see, I have laid down the front fabric. The inside of the fabric is on this side, and then the outside of the fabric is like this. And then after that, I am going to lay on top of that the back fabric. And as you can see, this is the inside of the fabric, and then this is the outside of the fabric. The sparkly parts should always be facing each other, depending on which fabric you're going to do. So now I'm just gonna put pins going down, and then we're gonna sew. The pins are in. Now I'm just going to do a straight line, just following this marker on the sewing machine, and then this side will be done. So I have sewn in the straight line, and now I'm just gonna put in the waistband, and then we're gonna go sew it. Guys, I am so sorry. I totally forgot to show you how I added this waistband, but it is simply easy. What I did was this is the waistband that we cut earlier.
the one where we ironed the facing in, I pretty much just attached it to the top part of the skirt, as you can see what it looks like here, and then I did a straight line. I am so sorry about this, I totally forgot. Sometimes when you're sewing, you just get in the mood and start sewing, but the waistband is done right now. So now what we're going to do is to sew the last side of the skirt and then put in the zip. This side of the skirt we're going to add a zip, so I'm just gonna put a zip right here and I'll see how far I want it to go down. This is basically the hip of the skirt, so that's basically where I would end the zip so that it can really fit me. So I'm just gonna underline there, and from there on I am only going to sew from this area going downward, and I'm gonna leave this space open for the zip. I have sewed this area, and then now we have this part left. So I'm just gonna pin the zip, and I'm gonna show you how I pin the zip and how I sew it. This is the side of the skirt basically. I'm gonna put this thing here, and then I'll fold it, and then just put in this zip thing over here, and I'm just gonna pin it. Mind you, we have unfolded the skirt. This is the outside of the skirt, the sparkly thing, so we are going to sew on the outside now. Take the side part, fold it, then put the zip over here. Make sure that it covers a little bit part of the zippy side. So for me, I'm just gonna fold and I'm gonna put it here, and then I'm gonna start pinning, going down. It must cover the zipping part so that when you zip it, it doesn't show the zip, especially because this is not the zip's color. This is basically the pinned zip, and I'm going to sew it straight, and then after that I have to sew the bottom. By the way, I overlock every part of my sewing with a zigzag stitch. I didn't show it here because it's basically self-explanatory, doesn't need much, but if you need a tutorial, I'm always happy to do it. So every part of the sewing, I always just sew with a zigzag stitch so that the threading just does not come off. So once I'm done with sewing this zip, I am just gonna go ahead and also fold this bottom part of the skirt, and then I'm just gonna sew straight and we will be done.
This is finally the end of the tutorial. We sewed our own skirt. How cool is that? Like, we literally made our own clothes. It just never stopped baffling me. I'm so excited. I hope you're also happy with your hard work. If you have any problem, you've experienced any problem, experienced any confusion, don't forget to come to the comment section and ask me questions. I'll be happy to assist you. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. Let me know in the comments what you want me to do tutorial on next. I'll be happy to do that for you guys. I hope you're also looking forward to more tutorial. I really enjoyed filming this one.